leading $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Editorial, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for Black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the Black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@KBLA1580.com. That's advertising at KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you Black.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space. And when you're out there without care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because
The Tavis Smiley Show continues. I'm pleased to have you with us today. As promised in this hour, 2 conversations on the B side of this hour. We'll dialogue with policing expert, retired LAPD official, Cheryl Dorsey, given that today, believe it or not, is the 10th anniversary of the tragic death of Eric Garner. We'll talk about his death 10 years ago and what has or has not changed in the intervening decade. We'll do that on the B side of this hour. But we commence this hour with psychobiographer and personality psychologist Dan McAdams, Professor Dan McAdams, who shares his insights about the mass psychology of Trumpism and Trump's impact on both parties. McAdams' book is entitled The Strange Case of Donald J. Trump, A Psychological Reckoning. I'm pleased to have you on this program. Professor McAdams, how are you today, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Let me start at a strange place, speaking of strange, with that subtitle, A Psychological Reckoning. Unpack the subtitle for me, and I'll jump from there.
Sure. I wrote the book in 2018 and 2019, and I felt at that point we had to come to terms with Donald Trump. We know enough about him now to see what kind of man he is. And I felt like it was time, even though his term wasn't over, to sort of try to understand this guy in real time. And so that was, I like the idea of a reckoning. It's like a coming to terms with. It's like, hey, let's take a look at this.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of reckoning, what have you come to terms with since you wrote the book, given all of his misbehavior since that time?
Yeah, well, I've come to terms with a couple of things. One is that Mr. Trump doesn't change very much, and that everything I wrote in the book, I feel today still holds. At the same time, it's humbling to realize just how difficult it is to predict the future. I mean, I don't think many people could have predicted after he left office that there would be this incredible comeback and that we would have witnessed, what's going on now at the Republican National Convention, where he's being pretty much coronated as a unifier for the Republican Party.
Let me pivot. I'm swinging way out, and you'll understand why in a second. I'm going to come back in just a second, but let me swing way out. Given what you wrote about Donald Trump, which I have gone through, of course, given what you wrote about him a few years ago, and given what has happened in the intervening years, but particularly and especially given what happened last Saturday, you knew I was going to go here, obviously. If ever anything changes us, it is having a near-death experience. I've talked to many people. Indeed, I talked to a person who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, one of the rare persons who survived that jump. And the story of his survival is amazing unto itself. I wish I had time to just even top line it for it. Just an amazing story of how God and the sea lions held him up in the water until help got to him, and how he was rushed to a hospital, and he needed a particular surgery, and the specialist, the foremost specialist in the nation to perform that particular surgery to save his life after he jumped, was in Boston. This is in San Francisco, obviously. It just so happened that that specialist was in San Francisco that day and just happened to be touring the hospital that he was taken to. And they rushed him into surgery, and he got prepped, got a gown, and got himself together. And just an amazing story of how his life was spared and how he survived and all the work he's done since then, trying to save the lives of others, wrestling with self-harm. But I raise that because a near-death experience is the closest thing I know that one can have that really challenges you to look at who you are and to fundamentally change yourself. I am not a personality psychologist. I am not a psychobiographer, as are you. But I did watch Donald Trump on Monday night, and he seemed to be just looking at him, looking in his eyes and looking at him. He seemed to be a bit subdued. That's the best word I'd come up with, subdued. We'll see what happens in the coming days. We'll see what his speech is about on Thursday night. And even then, that may be politicking to win. It may not portend a real change. That's a long way of asking whether or not you think for a guy who you said earlier, and I agree, doesn't change very much, whether this near-death experience has the capacity to get him to look at all in the mirror, or whether he's so far gone, he is so narcissistic that even that won't make a difference.
That's a great observation. I've been thinking sort of the same thing. I have to tell you, Donald Trump defies almost every law we know about psychological development. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's just such a one-off in the terms of he really isn't very different than he was when he was 5 years old. I mean, it's really remarkable. And he'll sort of say that about himself. He doesn't see himself as changing. One of the main ideas in the book is that Donald Trump doesn't have a story in his head about how he came to be and where his life is going. He doesn't see himself as a human being who develops over time. So given all that, and given how stable, he's been in the sense of non-changing, this event could be the thing. I mean, if anything is ever going to change one. I noticed the same thing in his face. It's funny you should say that. As he was walking in, as they introduced him at the convention, he was a little more somber. I don't know, maybe I was reading too much into it, but it actually looked like there was some introspection there, which he never does, and some thoughtfulness and so on. So I'm thinking, is this the thing? Is this the moment where we're going to actually see a developmental move forward in Donald Trump's life? I don't know. I guess if I had to bet money on it, I would say no, probably not. Yeah. But I could be wrong, and it would be pretty remarkable. I think we will get some signs of that with his speech. But more importantly, how does he conduct himself going forward in the next couple weeks? Donald Trump, I mean, for better and for worse, has always been a fighter, a warrior. He fights to win. He's always focused on the moment, winning right now in the moment. He can't step back from that and see the bigger picture ever. But maybe that changes. Yeah. We'll have to see. I
take your word. I saw a bit of that somber as well. So I would define him on Monday night as appearing to be somber and subdued. We'll put our two words together. We will see again what comes in the speech on Thursday. Even then, as I said a moment ago, some of that's got to be chalked up to politicking. The guy wants to win. We will see, though, for real, in the coming days, weeks, months, and years, whether or not that near-death experience has really done anything to fundamentally change who he is. But as I said yesterday on this program, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. You have to choose to grow. We shall see if Donald Trump will make that choice again into the future. But for now, we continue our conversation with contemporary psychobiographer and personality psychologist, Professor Dan P. McAdams, whose book is called The Strange Case of Donald J. Trump, A Psychological Reckoning. I've got more questions. He has more answers. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues? Who are you? Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
I occasionally have nerve discomfort in my hands, so the things I love to do...
Let's play something, Grandma.
...became difficult as I got older.
If you have occasional stabbing and burning in your hands and feet, try Nervive Nerve Relief. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use. Say yes to healthy nerves with Nervive Nerve Relief. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now, you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears, thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable with Always Fear No Gush.
When you use Bounce dryer sheets and your clothes look amazing, it's the sheet. Less static in your life? Yeah, it's the sheet. Smelling fresher than ever? It's the sheet. Oh, so soft fabric? Ooh la la. It's the sheet. Less wrinkles on your clothes? You know it's the sheet. Bounce dryer sheets. More freshness, more softness. Less static, less wrinkles. It's the sheet.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Professor Dan P. McAdams, author of the book The Strange Case of Donald J. Trump, A Psychological Reckoning. And we are having this conversation in part today. And I'm glad Professor McAdams accepted my invitation to come on because I want to try to get inside Donald Trump's head. That's scary, but I want to try to get inside his head to the extent we can, particularly on this side of that assassination attempt and whether or not that moment has any power to get him to look in the mirror and change his ways. But there are 3 big questions I want to ask specifically about this psychological reckoning, Professor McAdams. Let me start with the first big question, make it the most of our time here. First of all, tell me more about the mass psychology of Trumpism. It's one thing for Trump to be who he is. It is quite another for him to have the kind of sway, the kind of hold that he has had vis-a-vis the mass psychology, the impact and control that he's had over all of these MAGA followers. So talk to me. I'll stand down, pass the mic to you. Talk to me about the mass psychology of Trumpism.
Yeah, I've been concerned about this since I finished the book. The book is about getting inside his head, but the other part of it is what is the hold that he has on people? And, you know, it's just so hard to figure out. But I've come around to a view that sounds a little strange, but I'll just throw it out for you. And that is this. I think for a substantial number of Trump's hardcore supporters, I don't know, maybe 20 million of them or something, the real hardcore base, they do not see Donald Trump as a person. He is not a person in their mind. They know he's a human being, he's flesh and blood, but they see him as more than a person. They see him as superhuman. Some of them do. Some of them see him as an instrument of God. There are many evangelical Christians who believe that Donald Trump is in some sense part of a divine plan. And even if Donald Trump himself doesn't realize it, he's carrying out God's work in some way for a Christian nation. So there's that. There's a number of people who aren't necessarily of that persuasion who look at him and marvel at what he can do that seemingly virtually no other human being can do, no other person can do. He has certain powers, right? He sees himself the same way. He does indeed believe that he has powers that other people don't have. For example, he will tell you, and he truly believes this, it's not a shtick, he will tell you that he has never made a mistake, that he has never had a bankruptcy. You know, he even though objective evidence suggests he's wrong, he believes these things about himself to make him more than a person. At the same time, and this is really key, he is less than a person too, in that he doesn't struggle the way the rest of us do. He doesn't have doubts. He doesn't have an inner life. He doesn't have a moral sensibility. And I think his followers see him that way as well. And therefore, he can be convicted of felonies. He can be engaged in behavior that would sink any other politician, any other human being. And it doesn't seem to make a dent because he's just different. He's what I call a liminal figure. Mm-hmm. And what that means is like somebody who's more than a person, somebody who has, you know, like a mythic kind of force, like almost like a god. But at the same time, those kinds of forces, those kinds of figures, they're not morally culpable. They don't have the inner life that the rest of us have. And so we cut them some slack. So what? If he does this or does that, he's part of God's plan, or he's a beast, a primal force fighting for me, and I don't care if he's a terrible person because he's my guy fighting for me. So I think there is this hold he has on people who see him in some kind of space that's between where human beings exist on the one hand in persons, and on the other hand, certain like mythical or godlike figures.
Got it, Miles? So I want to play a clip. We played this clip yesterday, and I want to come back to it, Professor McAdams, because it fits quite nicely into what you're talking about right now. First of all, let me just say that I was struck by the depth of your response to that question about the mass psychology of Trumpism. Struck in part because on the one hand, there are people, to your brilliant point, who see him as a kind of divinity, an instrument of God on the one hand. On the other hand, there are folk who see him, frankly, as the Antichrist. So there are two different views, no surprise there, of Donald Trump. Some think he's an instrument of God. Others think he's the Antichrist. What is true for me is that for those who see him as some kind of divinity, for those who see him as an instrument of God, doing God's work, he may not be a perfect vessel, but they see him as being in place at the right time, to do the will and work of God. If you believe that before last Saturday, then you really believe that now, given that the devil showed up, says Tim Scott on Monday night, and that God saved Donald Trump to do the work that needs to be done. And I guess that means advancing Project 2025. We'll come to that in just a second. But let me just play right quick, just some sound, which I think dovetails nicely into the point you just made. This is Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina talking Monday night at the RNC.
Are you ready for 4 more years of Donald Trump? Oh, me too. Listen, if you didn't believe in miracles before Saturday, you better be believing right now. Thank God Almighty that we live in a country that still believes in the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the Alpha and the Omega.
That's enough, Miles. Thank you. I just wanted to, I can't take it again. I just wanted to play that piece of it, Professor McAdams, for the obvious reason. Again, Tim Scott says if you didn't believe before, you better be believing now. And he goes into the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I said yesterday, I repeat again, I am unapologetically a follower of that first century Palestinian Jew named Jesus. That's my faith tradition. And yet, this notion of people thinking that he is some form of divinity, that he is an instrument of God, and that God saved him on Saturday to run the agenda that he is going to run, which is so anti-God in so many ways. Don't get me started. But my question is, how concerned are you that those who did in fact believe before, believe ever more post-Saturday?
I think it fits perfectly. I mean, you couldn't have scripted it better, right? I mean, right before the convention, moreover. So this isn't the first time this kind of thing has happened in presidential politics. You go back to the early part of the 19th century, and Andrew Jackson, as president, faced up with a guy with a pistol. The guy tries to shoot him. The pistol jams. The guy pulls out a second pistol. It jams, and Jackson hits the guy over the head with his cane and walks away. And at the time, supporters of Andrew Jackson argued that's just proof. There you go. Mm-hmm. He is God's vessel. He is here for God. And like Andrew Jackson, Andrew Jackson was a flawed individual. Mm-hmm. He was intemperate. He was, very difficult and irascible, though, to his credit, if you want to call it credit, he was a man of God. He was religious. And it is somewhat ironic here that a man who has so little understanding of Christianity that years ago when he gave a speech, he talked about 2 Corinthians, right, instead of 2 Corinthians.
Yeah, exactly.
A guy like that should become a vessel of the Lord. But then again, God works in strange ways. Many people will say God chooses a carpenter to be, right. Joseph, and a poor virgin to be the mother. And so it's these unsuspecting agents. It's people who you would least expect to be on some sort of divine path who in one way or another make things happen for some sort of divine plan. So it's a very scary, in my mind, psychology. I come from that same faith tradition as well. And it just drives me crazy when you have these kinds of claims. And I think they're just going to proliferate going forward. I mean, Tim Scott is channeling a lot of people.
No, that's my fear. That's my fear. And that's why I played that clip again. He is channeling a whole lot of people all across this country. And you hit the refrain right on the head. They will tell you, I've had any number of conversations with them, that God uses imperfect people. Indeed, he does. Moses tried to get out of being the leader because he didn't speak well, and God used Moses. And David, the Bible says, was a man after God's own heart. We know the drama that David got himself into, and God used David. God turned Saul into Paul, and so we know in the New Testament that God turned a gangster into the greatest apostle. So that God does, in fact, use ordinary people, and that's the refrain they give you. So they don't expect Donald Trump. They say he's my president, he's not my pastor. That's their line. He's my president, right. He's not my pastor. And I think after Saturday, I think you're absolutely right that kind of sentiment is going to be on steroids, if I can put it that way. So my first big question was to talk to me about the mass psychology of Trumpism. We've done some of that, trying to manage the 5 minutes I have left here. My second big question is to tell me, and I raised this earlier, it seems to me that Donald Trump, though, has not just had an impact on one party. Clearly he has, but he's had an impact on both parties psychologically. Talk to me about that part, as they say.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes to the Antichrist thing. I mean, I think there are many Democrats who have traditionally seen themselves as mild-mannered and rational, who in the middle of the night wake up and think, oh my God, he's the devil, and I mean, is there something that I can do to almost indeed do away with him or something? I mean, this brings out really primal feelings on both sides of the ledger. It's hard to know how Democrats respond. We have, in President Biden, almost the opposite in a way in terms of temperament and so forth. Mm-hmm. And now you have these other issues with Biden that complicate it with aging issues and so forth. It just seems to be right now, it's such a dramatic contrast between the two parties. And for the Democrats at the moment, at least, they're looking weak and they're looking, kind of over the hill. And so I don't know how they recover from this, but right now, it's not a very pretty picture for the Democrats.
What do you make of this? This is my sentiment. You may agree or disagree, and I'm happy either way. But my sense is that Democrats have not yet figured out strategically how to handle Donald Trump. He's playing chess. They're playing checkers. So strategically, they've not politically figured out how to handle him. But I think psychologically, he's just running Boston on them. I think psychologically, they haven't figured this guy out either.
I think one of the reasons that they haven't figured him out, and this goes to something about him that is so bizarre. Donald Trump is 100% authentic. He's a primal force. He's not hiding anything. A lot of people think he's got some deep plan. He's got some deep strategy. Donald Trump exists to win the moment, and he's like a boxer in the ring. And he's coming at you full force every moment. And you think, oh, but he's got some other agenda. No, he's like an attack dog, right? That's the other kind of liminal figure in a sense of being less than a person. He's like a beast. There's something primal about him, the way he goes after people and so on. And how do you deal with that kind of brute force? It usually doesn't work in politics, but for him, it seems to work. And I don't know how you tame the beast. It's a very difficult thing.
I have a regular contributor, Connie Rice, who was on this program yesterday, as a matter of fact. And Connie often says that Democrats bring a knife to a gunfight, and that's what they're doing with Trump. They're bringing a knife to a gunfight. That's not how he plays. That ain't how he fights, and they ain't figured that out yet.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it. And also, I think they in response to that, they kind of scoff or they laugh or they oh, he looks ridiculous. Yeah. Well, maybe he does. But, he's winning the game, right? Yeah. And I think some of his supporters see him that way, too. It's like he's a beast. He's an attack dog. I don't want my daughter to marry anybody like him. Yeah. I don't want to be like him, but he's my guy. Yeah. I mean, he's my beast, fighting for me.
Yeah, Michelle Obama famously said, when they go low, we go high. I don't think so, Madam First Lady. I don't think in this instance, when they go low, we go high. I don't think that's a winning strategy, number one. And number two, Joe Biden talking about unity. We discussed this yesterday. Wrong time, wrong message. That is not the frame that we are in. This is not about unity. We are in a fight for the future of this democracy. So stop talking that unity talk. This is a fight, brother, and you better figure out what side you're on and how to handle the opponent on the other side. In the minute and a half that I have left, 90 seconds, my third big question, which dovetails nicely given what I just said, and I'm not naive in asking this, and I don't want to overstate it either. Can democracy survive Trumpism?
I hope so. I mean, I once thought that, it will survive Trump, because I used to think Trump was a one-off in the sense that there's no movement. It's just about him. But I think that's wrong. I think once he passes on, there is a movement here. We've got J.D. Vance. We've got other Trump wannabes. They don't quite have the same charisma, but that set of ideas, America first, keep out the immigrants, let's go back to the 1950s, let's put people of color in their place. I mean, that is a powerful idea out there with a lot of Americans, unfortunately, and I don't see it going away. So we've had these things before. I mean, it's not like this is new. And so I guess I try to, in my most sanguine moments, think, yes, democracy will survive this, but this is certainly the greatest test I've seen in my lifetime for our nation's democracy and our institutions.
To many, and indeed many around the globe, Trump 2.0 looks even more likely, and that's a scary thought. And so now is a good time as any to try to understand his motivations. The book is called The Strange Case of Donald J. Trump, A Psychological Reckoning. The author of that book has been our guest. I've been glad to have him on. Contemporary psychobiographer, personality psychologist, Professor Dan P. McAdams. Professor McAdams, good to have you on. Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you very much.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Lindsey Harding will be the first woman to ever serve as a full-time assistant coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. Harding, who is black, was most recently the head coach of the Stockton Kings, where she won G League Coach of the Year, becoming the first woman to win that award. The 39-year-old Harding led the Stockton Kings to the best record in the G League last season. Today marks the end of an era on the Las Vegas Strip, with the Mirage closing its doors. The Mirage, which opened in 1989, shut down its casino floor this morning. The property, nicknamed the Oasis in the Desert, will be transformed into the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino Las Vegas with a guitar-shaped hotel tower. It's scheduled to open up in 2027. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Blindster is a family-run business that began in 2010, and we've sold millions of custom blinds, shades, and shutters and received over 100,000 five-star reviews. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers are hiring the first female assistant coach in franchise history. Lindsey Harding, an assistant with the Sacramento Kings the past 5 years, is leaving the Kings to join the staff of new Lakers coach J.J. Redick. The 40-year-old Harding also coaches the Stockton Kings in the G League. Last season, she was named G League Coach of the Year. Harding was the #1 overall pick in the WNBA draft in 2007 and played 9 seasons in the league. Harding becomes the 4th female assistant in the NBA. Today is another opportunity to evaluate Bronny James with the Lakers rookie team. The Lakers are playing the Atlanta Hawks rookies in the NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. Atlanta's first-round pick, Zachary Rasacher of France, will be in the lineup. Rasacher was the #1 pick in the NBA draft in June. Tip-off time tonight at 6:30 on ESPN. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Don't miss up to 70% off select major appliances at the Lowe's Closeout event. But hurry, these deals are too good to last because Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid through 8/7 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $200-300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code PATH to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code PATH for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code PATH for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Roll Charmin Ultra Strong when you drop in the beat. It cleans with way less effort on your seat. Yeah, roll it, drop it. Yeah, roll it, drop it. Charmin flows extra strong from the road. Your butt hella clean while you're sitting on the bowl, yeah. It's all you need for that bathroom groove. Get you in and out without nothing to prove.
Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
Our guest now is policing expert, retired Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey with LAPD. I've asked her on this program again. There's some guests I have on, and we never seem to have them on to have good times. It's always talking about some drama, but such is the life of one Cheryl Dorsey. When you're tracking policing in this country, rarely are there conversations that are inspiring, uplifting, and jovial and fun. But I appreciate her for taking the phone call and coming on our program. I invited her on because today, believe it or not, is the 10th anniversary of the death of Eric Garner. Yeah, that's right, 10. I had to check my own facts on that to make sure I was right about it. 10 years ago today, Eric Garner died in that chokehold, and I wanted to have Cheryl Dorsey on to talk about what has or hasn't happened in the intervening years. First of all, Cheryl, good to hear your voice. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Tavis. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you back on this program. Thanks for your time. As I said, we never have. One day we got to find something fun to talk about, just for the sake of moving away from these difficult police issues. But I'm pleased to have you on for these minutes here. Let me just start with a broad question. It's 10 years since the chokehold death of Eric Garner, and broadly speaking, we can narrow it as we move forward. But broadly speaking, what do you think has or hasn't happened with police reform, and specifically, where are we 10 years later on the chokehold specifically?
Well, I hate to be a Debbie Downer, Tavis, but really, truthfully, nothing has changed, and we certainly have evidence of that, and I could ramble off a list of names of folks who not only start with Eric Garner in 2014, but here in Los Angeles, Ezell Ford, Mike Brown, in St. Louis, Tamir Rice, John Crawford, Sandra Bland, Eric Harris. I mean, I could go on and on. So nothing has changed. We get lip service, we get smoke and mirrors, we get a dog and pony show whenever there's a funeral, and folks show up with all these faux plans for reform, and nothing has happened, sadly.
So am I to believe then, given what you just said, that people have not, that departments across the country have not even rethought the chokehold?
Well, listen, I mean, sometimes when we see a chokehold, as in the case of Eric Garner, they'll tell us, well, that was a chokehold. That was a seatbelt, upper seatbelt restraint, and so, no, they haven't rethought it because, listen, if you won't admit that there's a problem, then there's nothing to fix.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you. Tell me, let's go back 10 years. You were doing your work 10 years ago, and I was doing my media work 10 years ago, so we recall this moment a decade back. Give me your sense of what you think the story, just the story coming out of this man being killed in this police chokehold. What do you think the story did in terms, or that incident did rather, to raise this conversation higher on the American agenda? I'm just trying to figure out what you think the impact was of what happened 10 years ago in that moment.
Well, I guess, the impact would be that there's, more discussion, and, there've been a lot of blue ribbon panels. And listen, that's, I don't say no to anything, Tavis, but what's the point and purpose of having all of these review boards and panels and, folks who come in and look at stuff and tell us what we already know if you're not going to do anything substantively to change the policy? And the problem with not only New York PD, LAPD, and these other 18,000 across these United States is that police chiefs, sheriffs, and commissioners have tremendous autonomy, control, and oversight with regards to their officers. They know who the errant ones are, and they tend to look away again and again until it makes national news, as in the case of Eric Garner.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me. You served for a couple of decades here in L.A. As part of LAPD. I mentioned earlier you retired as a sergeant. Talk to me about your views, just personally, on the chokehold.
Well, I think that there's a place for the chokehold. I mean, listen, there's some bad actors out there, and not everybody who the police encounters, deserves deserves to be dealt with in a way that is gentle and kind, because they don't respond in kind. And so, but you have to be able to articulate that need for that use of force. And then when you get someone into custody, if you have to do so by way of a chokehold, let's say, and it's appropriate, then once you get that person into custody, you got to stop. You can't punish an individual because in your mind they didn't comply, they didn't turn around quick enough, they didn't come here as you ordered them to do. And time again, what we see are errant officers punishing black folks who don't, in their view, comply with the officer's directive.
In the academy, what do they teach you about when, where, how, and why to use the chokehold?
Well, it's changed over time. When I came on LAPD, I mean, you could tell somebody, come here, and they could turn around and give you the finger, and then you get to put them to sleep. I mean, that was the time I came on. Chokehold was the thing, that we just did just 'cause, right? Mm-hmm. But it has evolved into, every department has a use of force continuum, if you will, and again, once you get someone into control and custody, then whatever that force is must stop. And we don't see that happening.
Mm-hmm. What evidence? Again, you're an expert in this field. What evidence have you seen over the years of your being an expert on policing? What evidence have you seen? Let me rephrase that. Tell me what you've seen in the evidence that you've looked at about who the chokehold most often is used against or on.
Well, listen, this is not relegated to just a chokehold. This is just use of force. And so you know how that goes. I don't have to tell you. It's used against people who look like me and you. Most regularly, we see white folks all the time challenge officers, fail to comply, go in pursuit, have officers pursue them, and then have officers chase them. I've seen white folks chase police officers around their own car, and nothing happens. They take them into custody as if they were next of kin. And so it's often that folks who look like you and I, and brown folks, who are treated in a way that is inappropriate, and then it's foo-fooed away, minimized and mitigated by the higher-ups, because they understand that at the end of every one of those uses of force, especially those that end in a death, is civil liability.
Yeah. When you do this work that you've done for day in and day out for years now, and you run the list that you ran earlier, we're talking about the death of Eric Garner, the chokehold, tragic death of Eric Garner 10 years ago today. But your first answer to me was to run a list, and you stopped yourself because you could have done it for hours. You ran the list of all these names of persons who have been subjected to misuse of force since Eric Garner. How do you process getting up every day doing what you do, knowing that list just continues to grow longer?
Well, I had to, truthfully, Tavis, just kind of make sure that I was in charge of my own mental health and well-being. And I used to have a podcast where I would weekly talk about things that were going on to educate folks, and more importantly, let folks know what you need to do in your individual communities if you really want to have some say about what goes on. And I was getting Google alerts. I continue to get them, but I just get them and delete them now, because there's not a day that goes by, Tavis, that somebody that looks like me and you isn't either killed in custody, isn't beaten severely, isn't shot by police. I get these alerts on a daily basis, and so truthfully, I just step away.
Yeah, no, I hear you. When we come forward, I saw this. I haven't had a chance to even get into the details myself, but since this is the stuff that Cheryl does, I'm sure Cheryl's on top of it, and we'll talk about it when we come forward. This headline made national news because it's about policing, because it's a mayor of a major city, and the mayor of that major city happens to be the mayor of Los Angeles. And she's a black woman, Karen Bass. So the headline that broke yesterday was that Mayor Karen Bass vetoes ballot proposal to let police chief fire problem officers. Strange headline, right? That the black woman mayor of L.A. Would veto a ballot proposal to let the police chief here in L.A. fire problem officers. It became a national story literally the moment that it went out. You may have seen it where you're listening to me right now across the country. And there's some nuance to that, and I'm going to get Cheryl Dorsey to sound off on that, how she read that headline, how she read that article, more importantly, how she read this decision by the mayor of L.A., Karen Bass, to veto a ballot proposal to allow the police chief to fire those problem officers that Cheryl Dorsey referenced a moment ago. We'll let Cheryl sound off on that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. Just a few short months ago, California Attorney General Rob Bonta filed 11 felony charges against Diana Turan, an assistant district attorney for Los Angeles County. The charges allege that Turan unlawfully accessed confidential computer data, including police officer files in 2018, and continued to use them after joining the DA's office in 2021. Ironically, Turan, who is now on administrative leave, oversaw the Public Integrity Division responsible for handling high-profile cases of police misconduct and public corruption, including the charges brought against LA City Council member Kern Price last June. To be sure, the case against Price has raised plenty of eyebrows. Indeed, one noted legal scholar has said publicly, and I quote, "Everything about this prosecution reeks," close quote. Could A.G. Bonta, with aspirations to become California governor, be punishing Turan for her role in D.A. George Gascon's police accountability agenda to curry favor with police unions? Could D.A. Gascon be using the case against Price to showcase his tough stance on crime and political corruption as he vies to retain his seat as D.A.? Honestly, I have no idea, but here's what I know for sure. Kern Price has been elected and re-elected by thousands of voters, mostly black and brown, who stand to be further disenfranchised if this matter is not handled correctly, which is why it matters to us at KBLA Talk 1580. When the prosecutor is being prosecuted, it seems to me that at the very least, there ought to be a thorough, top-to-bottom, independent review of all cases under Diana Turan's purview to ensure that none of these cases have been tainted. Justice and fundamental fairness demand no less, if public trust truly matters. And I hope it does. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley. We welcome your feedback.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
I will get back to Mayor Bass and this headline of yesterday that she has vetoed a ballot proposal to let the police chief fire problem officers. A lot of folk hit me on that and said, "What? Can you explain this? What does this mean? Why would the mayor not want the police chief to have the power to fire problem officers?" We'll get to that in just a moment, but there is some breaking news here. There always is when I'm on the air these days. This is a big story. This is big. I told you yesterday, so Cheryl, just stand by for a second, please. I apologize for this breaking news. I told you yesterday, we talked about the story that broke while I was on the air yesterday, that there were 20 major Democrats who had signed a letter asking for the DNC to slow down its process of renominating Joe Biden. Never mind his great speech at the NAACP yesterday in Las Vegas. 20 Democrats yesterday signed this letter saying the president of the DNC needs to slow their process down. Essentially, this Sunday, as early as this Sunday, the DNC, now that Donald Trump is the official nominee, no longer the presumptive nominee, the DNC trying to get the same thing done for Joe Biden in advance of the convention mid-August in Chicago. I'll be there live covering it every day. But in advance of that convention, they wanted to get Joe Biden confirmed immediately as the official nominee of the Democratic Party. So they were doing starting a virtual roll call this Sunday, as early as this Sunday, starting a virtual roll call of all the delegates around the country to ensure Joe Biden is the official nominee, to do that quickly, to do it swiftly, and to get this story behind them about Joe Biden being replaced at the top of the ticket. News breaks just now that Adam Schiff, who was just in this studio a few days ago, soon to be, I think, the next senator from the state of California, replacing the late Dianne Feinstein. Adam Schiff has now said that Joe Biden should drop out of the presidential race. That makes him the highest-ranking Democrat in the country. This is the same Adam Schiff, you recall, that led the impeachment hearings, the first impeachment case successfully against Donald Trump. And he's been a target of the right ever since. But he's about to become, if he can beat Steve Garvey, the former Dodger great, all the polls indicate he will. Adam Schiff will be the next senator from the state of California. LaFonza Butler, the sister, is holding that seat warm for the time being. But Adam Schiff, in the inner circle, in the leadership, at one point chair of the House Intelligence Committee. I mean, he is a major, major player inside the Democratic Party. And he is now the highest-ranking sitting Democrat to call for Joe Biden to drop out of the presidential race. This is going to reverb all day long. And now that Schiff has come out, the ultimate question is, will other Democrats of stature and power? You saw Nancy Pelosi sort of backing away the other day and saying the president's got to make a decision. Time is running out. So this is these things are coordinated. Trust me, this doesn't happen willy-nilly. Adam Schiff is now out today, and so it raises questions between now and Sunday about whether other prominent Democrats will come out. But the president is maintaining that he is steadfastly going to stay in this race. But these major Democrats now may start to come out now that Adam Schiff has come out. There's your breaking news. Our remaining moments with Cheryl Dorsey when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Now back to the story we were discussing in this half hour before that news broke that Adam Schiff has called for the president to stand down. This is the 10th anniversary of the tragic chokehold death of Eric Garner in New York, and all that has or has not transpired since that time. And this story broke yesterday, which ties in nicely, I think, to what Cheryl Dorsey, our guest, and I are talking about. I only got 3 minutes left here, but let me just read you the first couple of paragraphs of the LA Times story to put this in proper context. Where the mayor calls me and says, Tavis, you didn't contextualize that headline right. The headline in the LA Times reads, Mayor Karen Bass vetoes ballot proposal to let police chief fire problem officers. Mayor Karen Bass has vetoed a proposed ballot measure to rework the disciplinary process at LAPD, a step that could result in its removal from the November 5th ballot. In her veto letter to the city council, Bass said the proposal, which would have allowed the police chief to fire officers accused of some types of serious misconduct, quote, risk creating bureaucratic confusion, close quote, within the LAPD. Bass said the proposal, which would also have reworked the composition of the department's 3-member disciplinary panels, had gaps in guidance and provided ambiguous direction. I look forward to working with each of you to do a thorough and comprehensive review with officers, the department, and other stakeholders to ensure fairness for all, she wrote. The current system remains until this collaborative review is complete and can be placed before the voters, close quote. I got a minute and a half, Cheryl Dorsey. How did you read that headline when the mayor says, I'm not at the moment going to allow the police chief to fire these problem officers, the ones you referenced earlier, Cheryl Dorsey?
Well, real quick, it's misleading. First of all, the police chief already has the authority to fire police officers, and this is referenced in that article. If you read further down, you'll hear Bass quoted as saying that the police chief can fire some offenses but not others, and there's already a two-tiered system. There are the ones who are, who get the homie hookup, who know command staff, who are well connected, and then there are the ground pounders like me who get, taken to the woodshed. And I'll just give you 2 words to help you understand what a board of rights, a.k.a. a kangaroo court, is, and that is Christopher Dorner.
Yeah.
I need say no more.
Nope, I recall that. If you don't remember the name Christopher Dorner, just look it up. Just Google Christopher Dorner and all the drama that came out of that, and frankly, all the truth-telling that people had to deal with, born of what happened to Christopher Dorner. Just Google that name. I'm out of time. Don't have time to explain it to you, but just Google Christopher Dorner, and you will take the point that Cheryl Dorsey just made. She is an expert in policing across the country, retired LAPD sergeant. Always pleased to have her on the line in moments like these to give us some insight as we commemorate 10 years ago today, the death of Eric Garner from that police chokehold, which ought to be outlawed, in my view, across the country, but that's just me. Cheryl Dorsey, good to have you on. We'll do it again. Hopefully not too soon, though.
Thanks, Tavis. Take care.
Take care. Stay strong. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Mike Moore in Day 3 of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The theme for the day is Make America Strong Once Again.